Good whenever this is, wherever you are. Hope everybody is well. Not legal advice. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. I think on the YouTube you can even become a member for whatever that is. But feel free. Become a member. Nice to have you here today. Wanted to briefly talk about two things, more than two things, but two things I'm going to focus on. First of all, if you're a GTII fan and you want to follow the receiver, there is a Twitter address. It's Twitter or X at GTII Receiver. So I don't think there's anything posted at this point in time. By the way, if you hear that sound, it's kind of just in the background. I have, since it applies to me, sort of, kind of indirectly, I have a rocket alert. So sometimes I'll hear rocket alerts. That's what I'm hearing. So you'll ask me where are rocket alerts? That'll be the next answer. Feel free to like, subscribe, join. This is just opinion. Don't rely upon it, just for entertainment purposes, if there is such a thing. Talking about law, how entertaining it is. I'm going to talk a little bit about Alpine, then I'm going to talk about the receiver's first interim order. For any of you out there that want to track the pleadings, in the case in Vegas, I think the case number is A24896-359-B for you, and it's in Clark County District Court. And that's the case number in which the receiver was appointed, and that's GTII. Before, of course, we start, I wanted to briefly touch on a couple things. What did the lawyer name his daughter? Of course, he named her Sue. What else would he name his daughter? Why don't lawyers enjoy fishing? Because the fish don't fall for their lines. This is all lawyer jokes, by the way. I'm going to skip that one. I'll go to the last one. How does a pregnant woman know that she's carrying a lawyer? She has a huge craving for bologna. Anyway, quickly on to what we're going to talk about. So let's talk about quickly Alpine. So Alpine, all you know, or whoever you know, or some of you might know, Alpine is a prime broker that was involved in the GTII and other things. It's been having its own fun proceedings involving the SEC, DTCC, MSCC, QSCC, and anything else that has a CC on it. There are two proceedings pending. There's one in DC that's on appeal, that's still on appeal. The oral argument was March. There was some recent letter briefs filed in October. Has not been decided yet. Don't know what the delay is. Perhaps they're waiting for some other case to be decided, but it's been quite some time. I don't know what's taking so long, but it is. And that's in the appellate court in DC. And just to kind of remind people, that was to stop the proceedings for an expedited expulsion 40 years after these guys got involved. So expedited obviously is a term of art. It's not real, but that's what this is. So we haven't gotten through the appeal, which decides if the expedited expulsion can go forward. So it's still a ways off since the court hasn't even decided the appeal. Separately, at the same time, there was an action in Utah, I think out of Utah, in which the DTCCCC and the NSCCCCC also tried to banish Alpine. Basically that they were, I would summarize it, this is my opinion, of course, that they were deemed a credit risk, and there was some problem with them posting a $10 million, either a bond or cash, might have been cash. So they were basically banished, and then they wouldn't be able to conduct business, or it would be really hard for them to conduct business. They They asked for a stay of the proceedings, which they did, and then they filed an application for review in April of this year. And October 2nd of this year, they amended that application, adding, because I guess there were attorney's fees that were added to the award against them in the amount of $260,000 or so. And so that was added to the application. So they literally filed an amended application to the SEC to review the decision that kicked them out. They also asked for an oral argument. There's no day for a hearing. That has not occurred yet. After that is decided, and let's say for the sake of our discussion, the SEC says to Alpine, you're out of here. They still have a right to file an appeal in, I think it's the Court of Appeal in the federal court. I believe it's a Court of Appeal, not the district court. And so they have one more round to go after that. So we're not near the end of that either. So Alpine is still going at a slow pace. Nothing has changed in terms of their culpability or what they're accused of. It's just, again, the regulators are extremely delayed, incompetent, unhelpful, whatever other term you want to use, in getting this forward. Because again, we all know, if we recall, Alpine's history is very bad, checkered with all kinds of nonsense and shenanigans with terrible people. Also, at least some of them appear to be terrible. And they're still around after 40 years and after numerous violations, numerous things. So that brings you up to Alpine, since that change in their Utah matter just happened. And I look at every day, I look at the DC appeal, and it's ongoing, and we will see when we get there. Okay. Let's move to the receiver's first interim report. It was technically filed on the 7th. I got it on the 11th. That's when I posted. I think it was the 11th. That's when I posted I would go over it. It's available to anybody. It's on the court website. It was prepared by the attorneys for the receiver with the help of the attorney with the receiver. And I'll go through it kind of in some detail. I'm going to move to my right, even though it looks to the left. What's the statute? I'm going to answer that question. That's an interesting question. I might as well answer it. What's the statute of limitations on Alpine shenanigans? It's whenever the court gets done, or when the SEC gets its head out of its blank. There really is nothing because if there was a statute of limitations, by now they would have been excised from the world. There's no reason for them to be in business at all. So there really is nothing stopping them other than the regulators doing their job and the courts doing an efficient job in completing this process, which they have not as of yet. So that's the answer to your question. Hopefully that will help. And hopefully I will when I lean over like that, I will be able to look at some other questions, which I will as we go on. So there's a report. Here's the report, 10-page. Oh, can you see it? Yeah, there you see it. Let's see. Where does it get the best coverage? Oh, who knows? It's 10 pages long. It's called the receiver's first interim report, suggesting there'll be other reports. And I'm just going to go over the salient points. It says basically he's hired to do multiple things to at least, first of all, take control over the property and the communication systems, to get progress on the audits and make sure the public filings are in compliance with applicable law, identify, locate, and secure and stabilize receivership assets, etc. Also, that he retained professionals, so he retained lawyers, the law firm of Garman Turner, and he also retained a forensic accountant, Richard Hawkins, to assist him in his work product. He then goes on to say that he's secured control over the communication system, made contact on September 19th with the information technology vendor, but they're still trying to get control over the phone itself. They've gotten control over, I guess, a P.O. Box 2 in addition to that. So the corporate emails are under control. It also indicates that, and I don't think there's a date, but I think it would be September 28th, I believe, that the receiver terminated all the officers and directors. He sent out notice, but nobody responded. So then he sent out a second notice on September 19th, excuse me, and letting them know, amongst other things, they had to turn over all documents, turn over all the property, and that they were terminated. And so that occurred quite some time ago. Basically, the receiver said that since that termination, only person to reach out was Kathy Griffin with 2 emails, but nothing of significance. And the receiver concludes, and this is his opinion, not mine, so I'm just reading the document. But the receiver concludes that the parties named, Reichman, Griffin, Rabari, Justine Reichman, which I think is Reichman's daughter, I believe, Don Gilbert, and Frank Benintendo, not the same Frank as with a similar name, but not the same guy, have failed to comply with the receivership order. So that's the claim of the receiver, that they are not in compliance. So, and before I go on, so what happens if you're not in compliance? Theoretically, you could go into court and get an order that those individuals are in contempt of the court's order. Not easy to get, requires a lot of work, but at some point in time, I believe, although I'm not counsel or whatever, but I believe at some point in time, somebody will make a contempt motion for a lack of compliance. It's kind of interesting, but that's kind of where it stands. Next, they've had communications with the company's auditors. So if you recall, somehow they got Borgers as their auditor. Borgers was terminated by the SEC, not just them. They hired a new auditor, which I think was called Fortune, in 2024. They were going to do the 2022, 2023, and I think the 2024 for the audits for those periods of time. The auditors have been cooperative with the receiver, providing them a cloud drive. They're trying to complete the final audit, but they're waiting for some additional data, and we'll have to see where this plays out. And this is interesting, I think. They're waiting for additional data to decide about how outstanding items should be treated, such as an expense, and these all are expenses, $23,000 over a 2-day period in travel expenses from the Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills, California. Oh, let me stop. I didn't even think about that. $23,000 at a hotel? Wow. I'm familiar with the Beverly Hilton Hotel. It's a nice hotel, but it's kind of old. It's being redone, I think. That's a lot of money for a 2-night stay. I don't know what that is. $2,400 for travel expenses for a single transaction at Neiman Marcus. Oh, interesting. So what would GTII be buying at Neiman Marcus, I wonder? What kind of great would it help in doing due diligence on acquisition targets? I don't know. Seems interesting, an interesting purchase. And you recall, we went through a lot of other items. So these are just items that the receivers is discussing at this point in time. They were looking for confirmation for over $500,000 in expenses. Just general, $500,000 in expenses. They're looking for confirmation and explanation of $50,000 in 2023 meeting expenses. I don't know what meetings those were. That's a pretty round number. It's a large number, especially when you have zero revenue. But maybe there's something to do. Over $10,000 in 2023 insurance expenses, and over $60,000 in 2023 auto expense. I don't know, and that's not auto, O-T-T-O, like the German auto. That's auto, A-U-T-O. So those are all items that Richard Hawkins, which is the receiver's forensic accountant, is trying to look into. And basically, they're just trying to find the accuracy of all these figures. They weren't trying to do an audit to make sure everything lines up. These are items that kind of jumped off that required analysis. So that's ongoing, and that's with the company's auditors, and that's with the forensic accountant. And when that's done, because here it says it could be done as soon as November 1, it really depends on how cooperative the parties are and how much court work needs to be done. Because obviously somebody could say, if it's a $23,000 item, they should be able to present a bill and a statement. It should be easy. But we'll see how that goes. The next thing he did is he communicated with everybody. So everybody associated with GTII, they contacted, let them know who they were, and to the extent that they were somebody who had information or assets, they were told to turn those over and comply with the court order. So they were provided, a demand and a copy of the court order. Some of the people that were contacted haven't complied, though. And even the receiver says that the ones that haven't complied, they may need to be forced to comply with the receivership order. And probably at some point in time, there will be compliance because otherwise they might be in contempt. And the ramifications of contempt, and it's not easy to prove, and it requires usually multiple hearings, but the ramifications are if you don't comply, and then if you don't comply again, conceivably go to jail. Usually not for a long sentence, but going to jail, usually most people don't like that. That's the general state of affairs. Next, the recovery of bank and financial accounts. So they established the fact that the main account is with TD Bank, and they're working with the legal department to get detailed account information as of the time, and they're being cooperative. As of this time, they don't have it, but they, obviously TD knows about the order, and they're not going to do anything. I would think they're not going to be doing anything to change the financial position as it exists today, and that's being looked at. Additionally, there's a bunch of accounts that they're trying to find. One, we don't know the amount that's in these accounts, but we need the cooperation of the officers and directors, and when that is going to be secured, we don't know. But there's a bunch of American Express accounts, some Bank of America accounts, Capital One, Citibank, and then TTII Strategic Acquisition Account 3370. We don't even know which bank that's in. But these are all being searched for and kind of need help. In the meantime, what has been found is a few accounts. In the meantime, there was an account held by a lawyer. I think I talked about it at one point in time in one of my videos that perhaps money had been transferred from GTII on behalf of some of the players for future legal fees. Well, this report kind of suggests that is true. So what they found is there's a law firm that had a trust account that was holding GTI money that was about $74,000 that's being transferred to receiver. There were another lawyers in New York, and this is the one I mentioned, where $300,000 had been transferred to that law firm, and that's being transferred back to the receiver's account. There's a Citibank account that has about $9,500, and there's a Mountain America Credit Union that's in process. So it's about $400,000 that's been recaptured just in cash since the receiver, and that's not including that TD America Trade account, which should have the majority of the cash. Guess, I don't know for a fact, but should have the majority of the cash that's sitting in GTII. Now, there may be other cash that pops up as we go on, but that's kind of like the first look what they found. There's also a note payable, and this is kind of confusing. So there's a loan that was made apparently in February 2023 for $100,000. I really can't tell, and there's been no payment. So there has to be they have to chase the money down. The name of the company that owes the money is called Astra Energy. So we will see. But they owe $100,000, probably plus 10 interest at 10% per annum on or before it was due as of February 16th, 2024. We'll see if that's collectible and how it's done, but that's another $100,000. On top of that, and again, this is a quick look. So this hasn't been an in-depth look. I'm sure there'll be other things that pop up to the receiver, and I'm going to take a quick look at questions. Just a quick look. Skeleton. Okay, nothing that stands out. On top of that, they have looked and found potential receivership property assets. And I'm just going to run through these. A Cartier watch worth about $8,000. That was charged as think about this. And you tell me if you find that anything about this would strike you. And let's presume this is true. Presume for the sake of discussion that the report that was filed in court is true. It says, an $8,000 Cartier gold bracelet. I said watch, it's a bracelet. Purchased June 25th, 2023, and charged as a 2023 meeting expense. That's interesting. That's an interesting meeting. Is that like in the gift bag? You know, when I go to like those meetings, I get a gift bag. I get like a pad of paper, a pen that doesn't write, and an eraser. And here at these meetings, you get a Cartier gold bracelet. I think these meetings are better. So I'm going to go to these meetings in the future. And anybody else wants to join me, please feel free. Number 2, items and what these are, I don't know. Items stored in a storage facility in Van Nuys, and then moved to LA, and then purchased by Mr. Reichman in September of 2023. We'll have to see what those turn out to be. We have the addresses of all those locations. It'd be interesting to find out what was moved there and what was purchased. Now, in addition to the moving expense, the Cartier watch I mentioned, the receiver is trying to verify I think it's $34,000 in expenses to the company in 2023 and 2024 tied to meeting expenses. And here's what the meeting expenses are: a Cam Studio dining table, Blue Green Works dining pendant light, a vintage Italian armchairs. Those are worth like $8,000, by the way. Table lamps, sconces, shelves for study, keto desk for study, a comfort chair, Eileen Gray Bibedin chairs. That's like $8,400. Some lamps, some more lamps, some custom tables, antique Oriental rugs. I guess these are all GTII expenses purportedly, even though they have no office space. Remember that they don't lease any space. So I wonder what you would use. What would you use this stuff if you didn't have space? Where would you put it? I wonder, would you put it on the website? Could you actually put like a lamp on the website? I wonder. It's confusing to me. It's confusing. Why would you need furniture if you didn't have a location? But maybe there is a explanation for that. Number 3, a Range Rover, a 2024 Range Rover Sport, expense to the company in 2023. And then there's an email that the receiver puts in after that is from the accountant talking apparently to Mr. Reichman, because it references David unless there's some other David. So the email is dated February 9th of 2024. I'm just going to take a quick look to make sure. I have to answer a quick question and about a dog, and then we're good. So 3. So again, it's Range Rover Sport, the auditor, the accountant. This might have been Borgers, I think. This is funny to me. So this is Borgers, the accounts that got banished. I think it's Borgers because of the timing, because Borgers didn't get kicked out till May of 2024. Email February 9th, 2024, 5:26 p.m. Edited for syntax and clarity. See original and support documents. But this is in quotation marks. David, your 2 checks were a little over your amount, so I put about $5,000 to reduce the auto accrual to make it disappear, or match is a better word. 2, the car purchase, about $150,000, I just buried in the profit and loss items. I really don't think you would want it showing as a depreciable asset popping out on the balance sheet. The other option is to offset additional salary. Think about it. That's an interesting statement from the auditor saying, I guess he's saying, I just buried it in the profit and loss items. Is that a good thing? I mean, does that suggest transparency, clarity, bearing something, and the word disappear? Those are the 2 words that stick out. there's a conversation between the audit. Apparently, it's David and the auditor, who David appears to have at least a communication with, and they're talking about disappearing and bearing items. To me, that would be problematic. It might be problematic. It could be concerning, but I guess not for these guys. Perhaps. I don't know. Okay. Credit cards. There's a bunch of credit cards. They're trying to figure that out. Then they're looking at the Reichman assets. So they're looking through some assets and shares. And so this is all things that the receiver is looking at based upon the preliminary review and things they found based upon, it's been a pretty short time, less than a month or so. So as of October 31st, 2023, Mr. Reichman's assets, as referenced in estate planning documents, were a 2007 Bentley GTC. I think that's our mechanic is associated with that Bentley. A 2020 Porsche SUV Macan. Now let's pay a little closer attention. The Hans and Rosie Memorial Committee, Inc. And there's 21 million GTII shares. The SF Irrevocable, that's a Florida entity, trust that holds 2 million GTII shares. The Anne Francis Trust holds 2 million shares. Something called the First American Business and Management Consultants. Dot 8 Inc., which is a Wyoming entity, holds 6 million GTII shares. And Special Assets, held by attorney Roy Lester, this is 1 million shares, to be sold purportedly at the direction of Kathy Griffin, and proceeds to be shared by David Reichman, Kathy Griffin, and Warren Markowitz. Interesting. So I think those are topics, and those 25, what is it? It's about, in my count, if I count, 32 million shares. So that's 32 million shares plus, whatever else that might pop out of there. Kind of interesting. So those are assets. And also they're going to find out if any other shares were sold by anybody. I think specifically it's, looking to see if any of those entities sold any shares. And then they're looking to see at affiliates. I guess there's subsidiaries. There's a bunch of subsidiaries of GTII. Did we all know there was a bunch of subsidiaries of GTII? As I look again to my left, so there are 8 subsidiaries listed, including TTII Strategic Acquisition, GT International Company, GT International Group, Bronx Family Eye Care, Classroom Salon Holdings, Gold Transactions International, Ludicrous Inc., Bioenergy Applied Technologies LLC, and TTII Oil and Gas Inc. So the receiver has been able to uncover these subsidiaries and is going to determine if they have value, if they have receivership assets, and what can be done. But that's pretty interesting that they've been able to locate all of those subsidiaries, and wondering if those subsidiaries might have their own subsidiaries. We'll see. Additionally, there is something that went on with Dot 8 Inc., and I mentioned that as one of Mr. Reichman's companies. And as of October 31st, 2023, Dot 8 was part of Mr. Reichman's estate. Dot 8, and this is what the receiver is suggesting, Dot 8 may have been sold to Justine Reichman for $1. I see, by the way, I see a bunch of banter, and I don't even know. And who's next? This guy. What's next? If you don't believe in the judge's ruling, then so be it. You don't have to. No reason to waste your time. Um, this is not me. This is not me speaking. This is the court. This is the receiver. If you, and it's true to anybody. Nobody's required to spend any time here. I'm not making any money off of this. If you just want to create disharmony and discontent, then go do it elsewhere. And anybody who sees that in the comments, if they want to point that out to me, I'm happy to block those people and so make the experience nicer. But this is not like this is a confusing question. This is not even a close question. Receiver wouldn't have been appointed but for the misconduct. It's not even a question. And how do we know that the misconduct occurred? Because you just look at their own financial statements. It's not confusing. So if you're confused, then maybe this is beyond you, and you should be focusing your attention on other matters that maybe are within your understanding. If it's beyond you, then it's beyond you. So let's continue. Anyway, dot 8. So that was one of Mr. Reichman's companies, and it's in his estate plan. The receiver thinks, and again, it'll either prove out or it won't prove out. We obviously know that a judge believes there was misconduct. So this is additional. This is not even the stuff that was before the judge. Understand that. So the judge who ruled on the receiver just ruled on what was before them. None of this stuff was before the judge. So this would be an addition to, not proving what already occurred. So anyway, dot 8. Receiver thinks that perhaps, and I don't know, there's supporting documents. I don't have them with me. I just have the report itself. I don't have the backup to it. But Justine Reichman may have purchased it for $1. Dot 8 sold over 600,000 in GTI stock and by the way, this is all public information. So this is not contrived. And if you want to go find it, go find it. Pull up dot 8, Inc. is the name of the company that I'm referring to. And you could decide on your own if the information that the receiver is putting out is accurate or not. So they sold over $600,000 in 2021 and over $2.2 million in 2022 from a Fidelity account. Don't know who that was, but the receiver is going to investigate that. There's people that have been there for quite some time. There's also a reference to Justine Reichman, and I don't know who that is specifically. It's obviously a family member of Mr. Well, I don't know. I presume it's a family member of Mr. Reichman. And there is a question apparently that the receiver is raising, and in part, it comes out of the pleadings that Reichman filed, I believe, in this case or the Nevada case, in this case being the case in California or the Nevada case. I presume it's the Nevada case, where there's reference to 8 million shares. And so the question is, because in 2021, Ms. Reichman sold over 2.1 million worth of GTI stock, and in 2022, over 3.1 million in GTI stock. I don't know what role Ms. Reichman played, if anything, with GTII. I don't know. Again, they don't have any office space. They have 2 employees or had 2 employees. Now they don't. They have none because all those employees were terminated. So I don't know what the stock is, but I guess the question that's presented is there appears to be 8 million shares, and it's hard to tell what happened to those 8 million shares, especially in light of those other sales generating it looks like $5.2 million in 21 and 2022. So that's something that's under investigation. And I know there's some real property that's at issue also. And I mentioned the hands, and we're almost there. We're almost at the end. I mentioned the Hans and Rosie Epstein Memorial Committee. They had, I think it was 20, they currently hold 21.185 million shares of GTII. It's tax exempt. And apparently the stock was placed directly from GTII and from Mr. Reichman's associates. He put this into his estate, apparently. This is what it says. H&R is part of his estate. The same guy who was involved in .8 is also involved in this entity. I think his name is Phil Fair, I think? I can't tell. It says Phil Fair is the current beneficial control person and member of H&R chosen by Reichman himself. That's what their receivers states. I don't know who that person is. I don't know the truth of that. That they hold a certain certain number of those shares, that Reichman has control over it, that he has a lot of control over it, and that it turns out that Justine Reichman is director and vice president of that entity. Apparently, we're getting accountants. The broker, Commonwealth Financial, is providing brokerage statements that will let everybody decide, what's going on. So all that's being investigated. Additional investigations. Through the receiver's initial investigations, it is believed that receivership assets to be further identified, located, secured, and taken possession of exist in the following asset classes. So in addition to whatever I just went through, we're on the last page, by the way, in addition to whatever I went through, and in addition to what I've talked about previously, they refer to bank accounts, the Citibank, TD Bank, Chase, Wells Fargo, to name a few. Securities, stocks, bonds, insurance policies. Real estate, locations in New York area, Los Angeles area, San Francisco Bay Area. So they're suggesting there might be real estate in those areas. Luxury goods, fine art, jewelry, home furnishing, designer clothing. And again, they're saying that this might be additional items that are assets of GTII. Automobiles, 2007 Bentley GTC, 2020 Porsche SUV Macan, 2024 Range Rover Sport, and trust holding companies, special situations. That's the Hans and Rosie Epstein Memorial Committee, the San Francisco Irrevocable Trust, the Anne Francis Trust, First American Business and Management Consultant, .8 Inc., TTI Strategic, ACQ Equity Group, assets held by lawyer Roy Lester, to name a few. And the report is signed by the receiver and by the receiver's attorney and was submitted to the court it's dated October 6th, submitted October 7th, and that's the first report. There will be multiple reports. That's the first interim report. I'm sure as they are able to knock off some of those items, we'll get more information, and I'll bring that to you. So that's it for today. There is just to bring you up to date, there's a motion for reconsideration to be heard in Nevada on the 16th. I think it's unlikely to be granted, but I will follow it and let you know if it turns otherwise. If you recall, the attorneys who represented, part of the what's going on here, also reflective of what's going on, is the attorney shakeup and the numerous attorneys and etc. So the attorney who's now representing Mr. Reichman, but seemingly at this point is not representing the other parties, is going to be, I guess, participating in the hearing that's occurring on the 16th. Prior counsel has a motion to withdraw that's heard later this month, and that's the current counsel. But Reichman has already changed his counsel in Nevada to have this new council's filing the motion for reconsideration, whatever other stay motion. So that's going on 16th. I'll keep you apprised, and that's it. So hopefully that summary, it wasn't much of a summary. It was more I'm reading the report to you. But that's the receiver's view of what's going on. That was submitted to the court. The court will have a chance to rule on the motion. Same court in Nevada will have a chance to rule on the motions for reconsideration, etc. I think the court was, just based upon what I saw. I don't think the court was very impressed with the Reichman group, and that resulted in the receivership order, obviously. And we'll see. We'll see how that goes on. For everybody out there, be well, take care. Thank you for being here today. If you have comments, questions, please leave them. Please share them. And I'll keep you apprised. Everybody be well, take care, have a great day, stay well, and we'll see you soon.